there's a story in every bottle. Well, here we are again.
What?
Another Monday. Were you
Now?
sleeping over there?
Right now?
Yeah.
No, I've been drinking.
Oh, he's drinking.
I'm at a brewery, Bob.
Brewery.
I'm at a brewery. Yes.
Guys.
This is it.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers, Randy.
Cheers.
So that's where we're at a brewery. This is Monday Night Live again. We're here with Bruce and Randy from Twin Barns Brewing, and really excited to learn their story and try
And
some
drink
more of
their
beers.
beer.
Yes. Can't wait for that.
Yeah, so they think we're coming here to tell their story. Really, we're just coming here to drink.
Right. We're not actually live right now, right?
Right.
Right.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
So hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for another Monday Night Live with the Hermits. We are, like I said, here at Twin Barns, and we're excited to learn a little bit about their story. We're going to learn about some of their brewing, upcoming beers that they're going to be releasing, and some of the ones that they have available now in their tap room. Before we get into the conversation, just a quick reminder: if you're joining us for the first time, or if you are joining us, if you've been here before but you haven't subscribed,
Pour
please
yourself a drink.
support-
Right? You always forget that part. Pour yourself a drink.
I figured that's a given. I
Okay.
don't think we need to. Do we need to tell our
Well, you
audience
tell
pour
everybody
yourself
to
a drink?
poke the button and the bell. I mean, you might have to tell them to pour a drink.
Pour yourself a drink and then poke the button. But if you're on YouTube, the subscribe button is right below the video. If you're on Facebook, it's a little bell. And if you subscribe, then you will get notice whenever we go live, wherever we are in the world. And we may surprise you. I think last week we were live from the ice on the Meredith Bay.
Yep.
So if you're interested in what we're doing, or if you want to tune in for our Monday Night Live shows, please subscribe to our channel. If you like what we're doing and you think you have some people in your life who will enjoy or appreciate what we have to share, please share this video on your Facebook pages and or your social media, and let others know what we're doing, and so they can tune in too. And if you're with us today, let us know you're here. Give your name in the comments and say hello. That way we'll know you're watching. And if you have any questions for us or for the folks from Twin Barns, please post your questions in the comments. Our co-host Marika here is ready to respond to your questions as they come in, and she'll bring them to the group. And,
Great.
I think, have I covered all the
think so.
details?
Yeah.
Excellent. Great. So without further ado, again, Randy, you're the head brewer here at Twin Barns,
Correct.
and Bruce, you are one of the co-founders that
Correct. Yep.
that founded the brewery, and you guys opened in 2009.
Yeah, it was July of 19.
In July.
In July.
In July, I
You
know.
jumped
right into the fire.
July in the Lakes region.
We did. Yeah. Well, the plan was to open in May, and like any other construction progress or project, we missed the deadline on that. And then we bumped right up against Bike Week, which was going to be in June. So at least we're smart enough to say we might want to push beyond Bike Week
Good
and not open when 150,000 bikers were in town. So we missed Bike Week, thankfully, because we had a few bugs to iron out. But yeah, we opened in July, and it went great.
Excellent. So I want to talk a lot about what's going on today, but
Sure.
I would love for you to give a quick synopsis about how you and Dave, your other partner, came to own a brewery here in the Lakes region. What brought you here?
Yeah.
Sure. So there's no quick synopsis, but
Okay.
I'll try to do it because it was about 30 years in the making. So we started talking
I'm
about.
familiar with that sort of story.
Yeah, I know. So we started talking about it in 1995 or thereabouts when we met, and we were consultants at the time, suits, ties, advising large corporations, but we always had a passion for beer, and we were both home brewers. So we talked about it, and then life kids' houses, everything got in the way, and it got tabled until just probably about 2018 in the spring. And the short story is we went on a brewery tour of New Hampshire, and
Whole state.
whole state. I'll keep it vague as to how many breweries we hit in 3 days, but it was north of 20. And
So why New Hampshire? Where's
well,
the connection
we-
for either of you there?
yeah, so Dave had an obvious connection to New Hampshire because he had a house up on the lake in Walton Borough. And I had a bit of an older connection to the lake. I went to camp in Wolfboro from the age of 8 until I was a counselor. This is Camp Belknap in Wolfboro, and I was a counselor and had since come up every summer to the lake. So I knew the area. So it was a little bit of a why not New Hampshire? We were both from Massachusetts that had moved up, and we were looking for a combination of what makes sense for us because we wanted to have fun. We just didn't do it just as a business. It was because we thought it would be fun.
Yeah.
But also you sort of have to map that against where's the opportunity.
Sure.
So when you looked at New Hampshire, of course, at the time there were 70 or 80. I think now there's about 100 breweries. But at the time there was a big hole in the middle of the state, particularly around the lake.
Yep.
And we love the lake. So fast forward, we started looking around, Meredith and Laconia because two things. That's where all the people are. And also there was not one brewery within 40 minutes of this location.
That's amazing.
So we said, let's start looking. And within a year of us shaking hands during that brewery tour and saying, are we going to do this? Or are we going to be those guys when we're 95, rocking on a porch saying, oh, we should have done a brewery. I said, let's do it. We shook hands. And within a year, we were open.
That's
From
great.
finding a place
Wow.
to financing to architecture to construction to finding this brew system and installing it and developing a beer portfolio with the help of a new brewer to brewing to signage to opening about a year.
Yeah, so no wonder you had to open in July.
I know, right?
When were you thinking you were
Yeah.
going to open?
Yeah, our contractor thought we were nuts. It's like, you're never going to be open by May. So he was right, but he thought more like September, October, November of that year. But we're a little stubborn. So we made it happen. Ask him.
And now with that said, you also found 2 old barns that needed major renovations. So
Yes.
it's not like you just moved into like a turnkey brewery either. So
Fair
that's-
enough.
You'd think that alone would add
Absolutely.
like 2 years to the project.
That's a good point.
I
Oh, yeah.
remember this building with what it was before.
The
It was a
motorcycle
brewery.
museum.
a
It was.
motorcycle museum.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And before that, it was an antique shop.
it
I
was.
don't even think it was winterized. They used to close every winter.
It wasn't. He had one propane heater on the second floor, and that was it. So all new mechanicals, plumbing, heating, air conditioning, septic system, wastewater system, all new windows, fire suppression systems, the kitchen. So yeah, it was a big project. Now it had great bones. As soon as we walked in, you kind of had to look past the creepy mannequins and police motorcycles and such hanging from the ceiling, and it had a jail in the basement, right through that door.
Yeah, I remember
So-
A jail?
A jail, yeah. Enough said. So there was a little work to be done. So yeah, fair comment. It was just basically a really cool looking shell, which then we pulled this together.
So you're going into 3 years in here. Any
Mhm.
regrets?
No.
Loving it.
Yes, and it's every day is a challenge. Ask Randy as well. It's something different every day. So we're, like I said, Dave and I were consultants from way back. So very, like I said, formal suit, tie. Every day was fairly static. The clients might have changed, but the work was the same. Whereas here, it's in the morning you're doing marketing work, in the afternoon you're doing plumbing, and the next day that we're doing beer strategy for the next quarter, to doing live Facebook broadcasts, to who knows what it's going to be. But
Fixing
it's a lot
tap
of fun.
lines.
Fixing tap lines.
Fixing broken pipes in the
Fixing
winter.
Broken pipes, yeah, which we did both of those last week.
Yeah.
And never drinking beer, of course.
Never. No, who's got time?
Who would do that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Who's got-
It's a job.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be drinking beer.
Well, we do
Work.
our fair share of quality assurance.
Well, and I have to say, as residents and business owners in Meredith, we're glad you chose Meredith over Laconia.
Oh, yeah, it's great. It's fantastic. Yeah.
I could be all
So do we.
place living in Laconia myself, but it's great.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be bad having a brewery right down the road.
Sure.
But this way, it's
Yeah,
on my
it's
way
only
home
for
from work.
30 minutes.
Yeah, it's on my way home from work. It's
There
perfect.
you go. I imagine there was a brewery in Laconia years ago. They tried.
A couple of
they
them.
did. Yeah,
There's
yeah.
been a couple of
Yeah.
come and gone.
Come and gone.
Yep.
And I have to believe that it can't be too far in the future.
Yeah, there's got to be one.
I understand
Yeah,
I've heard the number of something like 20 are in the chute in the state of New Hampshire.
Sounds about right.
So
Yeah.
maybe one of them's going to Laconia. I don't know. Hopefully for your sake.
Yeah.
So,
We've got good options though.
oh yeah. Well, last week we were at Defiant, where they are
Yeah.
showcasing the beers of breweries all over New England, and they have a really nice selection. So
They do. They do.
So
They do a great job there. Yeah, yeah.
good options. We all have beer in our hands. I think we should talk about what we're drinking. So why don't you start, Ken? What do you?
I'm drinking their porter. I love this porter. Well done, man. This is
Burwood
great.
Porter, yeah. So that's one of our kind of flagship beers. It's kind of seen some makeovers over the last couple years, but essentially it's a dry hopped porter. We use classic American hops, and so it's really nice. It's a very dry beer at its base.
Yep.
The malt bill is very dry and just very drinkable, but then we add a little bit of hops on top, a little bit of Amarillo, a little bit of Simcoe, and it just totally changes that beer. So it's dry, but it has a nice hop character to
Yeah,
it.
you really get it on the nose.
Yeah, but it doesn't
Come
like
into
blow
it.
you away with
Definitely.
hops.
No, but it's not.
It's
It's not like an IPA at all.
Right.
It's pushing that envelope.
Mhm.
It's making a porter a little more exciting.
right.
Right.
Little
Like,
added
stay.
element to it. Yeah, and you get that pine, that resin, that citrus to it. So it's definitely a staff favorite, that beer. So and right now it usually comes out in the fall, winter time, and then we kind of rotate some other dark beers during the year. So
How do you guys, formulate these things? A couple of home brewers. You guys have lots of
Yeah.
recipes, lots of time, and all this stuff. And you got a professional brewer who's got lots of recipes, lots of ideas, and
It's all him. So, well, the formulation and the activity of creating everything we're drinking it's honestly all Randy. He's the genius behind the beer. So I think when it comes to deciding what beer we should have in the portfolio, it's a group effort. So we say, hey, either this is what's trending, or you know what, we haven't done X in a while, or in the case of the Kolsch, you know what, we've never done a Kolsch, and it's about time, and they're becoming more popular. So we have a bit of a powwow that says, next 3 batches probably should be X, Y, and Z. What do you think? And we all agree. And then Randy, frankly, just goes off and does his magic. So he creates the formulation. I don't think I've ever seen him do a test batch. There's no such thing as a pilot system with Randy. His pilot system is 310 gallons at a time.
we don't want to install a pilot system. So yeah, we don't have space for a pilot system. So.
So it's a good segue, actually. So we will get into talking about the other beers that are in our hands, but I do want to take this opportunity. So Randy, you come here from a different background.
Mm-hmm.
You started here in 2000, late 19?
Late 19, yeah, October, November of 19, yeah.
And I believe you came from Hobbs, right?
Yep.
And I think you made quite a name for yourself over there with some of the beers. You had some award-winning beers, so it's you guys must be really pleased to have got Randy to join you over here.
Absolutely, yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your background is, where you came from, how you got into this?
So very appropriately, I have a degree in journalism, which comes in handy every single day. The written word turns out when you graduate college in 2009, and we had a very poor economic downturn in 2008. It's hard to get a job in 2009 when you graduate college.
Especially in journalism.
I was a guy who wanted to be a sports writer for newspaper, and newspapers were almost dead or dying at that point. But I had a life in journalism for a little bit. I actually was a sports editor at the now defunct Laconia Citizen.
Oh, really?
Funny enough, yeah. So I lived in the area before I came back to the area. But yeah, I was the editor there for about a year. Had a quarter-life crisis. Moved to the woods of New Hampshire. This is a very brief story because it's not exciting at all. Was in New Hampshire, northern New Hampshire, for a couple of years. I lived up in Errol, which is a town of 200. Doing something else completely random, and then I really got into home brewing. I started. I remember working at the Citizen, and I would, that job as a sports editor. You're sitting at a desk and you're waiting. You're covering a lot of games, but you're waiting for coaches to call you at the end of the night because you're trying to get the Laconia football score into the paper, whatever it might be. remember I would sit there and I might not get a coach call for 20, 25 minutes or whatever it is, an hour, and then I put everything into the paper, right? Well, I would sit there and read my homebrewing book, how to brew and all that good stuff while I was waiting for phone calls. And then eventually I was like, this sucks, and changed paths for a little bit. And then a couple years later, I actually had some friends moving to Colorado for grad school, and they said, you want to move to Colorado? And I was like, it's kind of in a funk, and I was like, let's go to a craft beer capital of America, really. So I went to Colorado without a job and sold most of my stuff and got to Colorado, and I got one interview at one brewery, and I've literally parlayed that 12-hour taproom job into basically being here right now 6 years later. But yeah, it all started with a brewery called Wiley Roots in Greeley, Colorado that didn't even think I'd show up for the interview because I said I was from New Hampshire. And they're like, yeah, if you do actually move to Colorado, I was like, I'm moving in 3 months. Or like, if you actually move to Colorado, like, we'll give you an interview. I'm like, all right. And so I show up, and it took a couple weeks, but to get all the paperwork done, but they hired me, and I was there for about 12, 14 hours a week and doing taproom stuff. And I just told them, I was like, with my journalism background, I knew social media, I knew marketing, I knew all this stuff. And so they're like, okay, well, we're going to throw this at you. I did that. We lost our sales guy at one point. I went on the road and did sales. And soon they were like, we want you to work, 40 hours a week. We want you to be full time. There was one of those things of just going out there and busting my tail trying to get into the industry.
Gotta do, right?
And then about a year later, my connection with Hobbs, they needed a new head brewer, and I was not qualified at all. And I told them that, but I also told them I'd figure it out, and they said, okay. And so I went over there, and the first recipe I wrote ended up winning a bronze medal at the Great American Beer Fest.
I remember that.
Yeah. That was 2017. So it wasn't like my first batch of that beer, but literally the first recipe I wrote was that beer, and then evolved it over a couple batches, and then won a silver medal the year after for that same beer. But when you go and win a medal at a competition like that, that was the first time I was like, oh, I actually think I'm making good beer. Because it's very hard when you make beer and then everyone, you get a lot of smoke blown up your behind. So it's tough to be like, a lot of people start breweries. They say their neighbors, they make the best beer ever, and then, but when you hear from qualified judges and that sort of thing, it's like, okay, well, we're on to something. And then, ever since then, it's just been kind of tuning in and dialing in recipes and working on different stuff. So
That's an awesome story. I mean, it's 100% self-taught.
Yep.
You started as a home brewer, and you built your knowledge and your skills from carboys to these massive tanks.
Yep. And I was a terrible home brewer. I was not a good home brewer. It was. I made a couple good beers, but there were some beers where I couldn't even drink it. I couldn't finish it. But it's all a learning experience, as you guys know. Like, you do something, you screw it up, and you say, "Why did I screw that up?" And then hopefully you don't screw it up the next time. So.
Well, why Hermit Woods is in business, because I really sucked at making beer. That's
how our
there.
story.
Yeah.
That's how our story got started.
Yeah.
Because had I not sucked at making beer, I probably wouldn't have met Ken. And Ken was going to teach me how to make beer, and I said, no, screw that. I'm just going to hang out with Ken more
Drink
often.
my beer.
Right.
Like his beer, because he makes really good beer.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing
So
wrong
my
with that.
path was different than yours, but that's a really great story, and it's remarkable how fast you've excelled at a skill that isn't easy. I mean, I've had beers all over the country, and there's not as many great beers as people think. There's a lot of
mediocre
average beers out there.
Yeah.
And you've been making great beers for a while now. You've only been doing it for 6 years?
Yeah, 6 years. I think this year. A lot of it comes down to is using your resources and meeting people in this industry that can help you out. And that's why if anybody ever has questions and comes to me, I try to help them out and lead them the right direction, because I mean, I would say I'm still lost, but for a long time I was very lost, and it was just a matter of, okay, meet people in the industry, meet people you trust. You really, you just have these conversations, and I have friends in the industry that I might shoot them a text message. I might wake up, shoot them a text message, and be like, "Is this crazy? What do you think about this?" And they're like, "Oh, I've tried that, or I haven't tried that, or I heard somebody else do this." It's okay, like that's kind of how you grow. One thing I tell new brewery owners and home brewers going pro is think like you know nothing and ask all the questions. Like you got to assume you know nothing. If you assume you know nothing and go into it saying, how can I make everything better? You're going to make a better product
That's great.
over time, you know?
Yeah, that's great.
And that's why, you know, there are times we've had a beer and that does really, really well. And people are like, wow, that's amazing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to change a little bit, you know? Like we said, we don't have a pilot system, but like I can kind of formulate a recipe and I know I get usually 80, 85% of the way there. But then when the final product comes out, you're like, yeah, I was 85% of the way there. But like, I'm going to make that 15% change to try to really make it what it's supposed to be. And that's, I've never, even that gold, the 2-time medal winning beer at GABF, that beer evolved over time. It never was the same thing. I never stopped working on that beer.
It's the same thing. Ken out of the box made some amazing wines. But every single year, he comes up to the tasting room with a new batch of something that he's just tweaked a little here, a little there,
Just want to
trying something.
push it, keep pushing it.
And it's remarkable the distance we've gone since the beginning at Hermit Wood. So I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's kind of, I think, what's exciting about it. It's what
Absolutely. And you're a creator, you're an artist, and you're driven by that. You know, you thought you were going to be a journalist, but your real talent is right here in this beverage format. I mean, I didn't know your story until just now, but prior to you showing up at Hobbs, I wasn't that keen on their beer. Then I was. Prior to you coming to Twin Barns, I wasn't all that keen on the beer straight out of the gate.
Come on now.
Just honest. It was good.
Yeah.
But when Randy showed up, it went up.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of Randy fans in the audience.
Oh, boy.
Jeff Silva and Todd Shagog.
Todd
Shagog. There you go. Sure, yeah.
Jeff Silva, he changed my diapers when I was a kid. So he knows what I've done from my whole life.
Yeah.
So
now you know why we love having Randy around.
Yeah, that was great.
Yep.
But
it's a big win for us.
I
super happy about it.
Like Ken said, it's honing the craft, and I think the people that do this industry really well, the really good brewers, really good, winemakers and such, you're always trying to get better. You're always trying to work on something. You're always trying to see, even if it's not a recipe, it's, well, how do we package it better? A big thing, like we have our own canning line. We can a lot of our beers. You can see them right here. The big thing, like when I can our beer, is how do we keep oxygen out? Because as you guys know, oxygen is terrible for beer. And it's like, if we can make that 1% better every time we run that canning line, if we can figure out the tricks, as I was telling you earlier, Ken, I think it takes at least a year to figure out a canning line, right? And we're about 14 months into it, 15. We're close. But even if you can keep that little bit of oxygen out every time, doing a little bit better with that, you're going to have a better quality product, especially when somebody, might buy your can and then maybe they don't drink it for 3 months. If you can keep that oxygen out, that's a win, because that beer is going to taste that much better for that much longer. So it's process stuff. It's everything.
So when you think about the fact that you guys bought this building, turned it into a brewery, loaded it with a bunch of brewery equipment you've never used before, and hit the ground running. It took you a year and 2 months to dial in your canning line. And what do you have, like a week to dial this in?
He dialed, as far as I'm concerned, he dialed it in his first batch, right?
Exactly. But when you first opened, that's what I'm saying is that, the amazing thing was that you got this equipment in here and got it up and running and produced drinkable beer.
Absolutely.
And that was amazing. And then, Randy again has stepped the game up. But
well, we really had one batch's worth of time to get it right. Because we were set to open on X date, knowing it takes 3 to 4 weeks if we started with ales to get them properly brewed and kegged. We had to start ahead of that, and we actually had to get special permission from the Liquor Commission to do that, because technically you're not supposed to brew.
We know about that too. We know all about that.
Yeah, so they said, you know what, give us a date when you want to start to brew, and we'll accept, and we'll watch, and we'll manage from there. But so we had one brew cycle in order to get 6 beers on tap for opening, and really had to get 6 right the first time, and I think it worked. Right? This is well before Randy's time, but it was a good start.
It was a great start. I mean, I've been to a lot of starting breweries, and it's not easy, especially a lot of brewers who are starting with small batch brewing and jumping into 5, 7, 10 gallon systems. It's not easy, and everything I learned from Ken and people like yourself, that's not an easy transition. It's not linear. It's not like, well, so, like a recipe, you just double or triple. So,
Right.
so it's a big learning curve, and you guys you just leaped right into it, and you
I
had,
did.
you know, maybe it wasn't the exact beer you wanted on the day you opened, but quite frankly, you had some really drinkable beers. I mean, I remember your early beers were really drinkable and enjoyable, and I do think you stepped the game up since you arrived. But
100%.
yeah,
And our early philosophy was to have a breadth of beers in the portfolio. So not 4 IPAs and a couple of darks. So from day one, our original 6, I think, was, you know, a double IPA and a single, yes, but also a blonde ale, a stout, a porter, a wheat. That was, and well, the Kolsch just now, yeah. But so we started with those 6, and Randy's continued to ensure that we have that breadth, so that when customers come in, they have a lot to choose from. So they have the standards. And as a matter of fact, 4 of the beers we have generally are the same beers that we started with almost 3 years ago, because we have, you know, a customer following for those beers, and we want to be consistent with those. But then Randy takes us in all kinds of different directions for the remaining 8 taps, right, all the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, on that train, like if I go to a brewery, like I want to go to a brewery that has great variety. So first and foremost, like enjoy drinking lagers, and I do like some hoppy stuff. But if I go to a brewery and they have 12 taps and 10 IPAs, it's like, all right, we're going to have a beer. We'll probably get out of here. But you come here, you know, and like I try to transition that to like my brewing philosophy is like, you can see on the table right here, like we have a couple IPAs, but we also have some really good, clean, crisp lagers. We do dark lager. We do sours. We've done some barrel aged stuff. And I think it's important to me. It's important to Dave and Bruce that we have a nice variety, because we have, you guys know, we have such a variety of people coming here, especially in the summer when things are really busy. Like we want to supply beer for everyone and everyone's palate. And
that's why we have beer at Hermit Woods.
Right, exactly. And so like for us, like it's funny, my brewing philosophy totally changed when I left Hobbs, because I think the way you brew is destined by where you're going or where you're at and what that setup is like. So when I got here, Dave and Bruce were like, yeah, we're going to build a beer garden outside. And I laughed at it because I was like, that's a great idea, where I'm not going to see that for 3 years.
You didn't meet Dave and Bruce yet.
Right. I didn't realize these guys built this whole brewery in a year. So if I knew known that, I would have not laughed at it. But then that summer we had a beer garden. We have a beautiful beer garden.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's great.
It's
so
great.
Once that was kind of in place and I kind of got a feel for the area a little bit better, I wanted to brew beer for the experience. So I want people to come here, sit in that beer garden. I want those people to hang out for 2-3 hours, drink a few beers. I don't want you to just show up, get a flight, and leave and go to the next brewery. Right. The whole goal is come here, find the beer you like, sit outside for 3 hours, play Jenga, play cornhole, sit outside and have a great time. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. We have a nice variety, but we have a lot of very drinkable beers and a little bit for everybody.
I want to speak to that. Has become really important to me as of late. Ken sort of caught me going down the rabbit hole of drinking IPA.
IPA. Like
everything I do.
Like Bob, you know what you're missing.
So he turned me on to this book, The Brewmaster's Table. It's written by the brewmaster from Brooklyn Brewery.
Garrett Oliver.
Garrett
Oliver, yeah. And it was a profound change for me.
Mm-hmm.
It just lit me up, and I all of a sudden wanted to try everything but IPAs. And for about 6 months, I don't think I'd bought an IPA once. I went to Case and Keg, and I went and started hitting up breweries and doing exactly what you're saying. What are the variations here? I don't want I know the IPAs. I've been down that rabbit hole. And that's what's fun for me about going to breweries is getting to see how you express yourself across all these different styles. And I've learned more about those styles. So I thank Ken for breaking me out of that, shaking me by the neck out of the IPA rabbit hole, because there's so many great beers out there.
You know, a lot of it comes down to execution. You know, so we were at Beverage Ice Fest yesterday in Tuftonboro, which is a great event. It's the best beer event of the year. I always say that. But right next to me was Wild Bloom, which is a new brewery in New Hampshire, and he has a beer called Bear Camp, which is a smoked golden ale essentially. It's 5.1%. I've had it before. He gave that to me yesterday, and I just cracked it open, and that first sip was just like, man, this is so good. And it's you wouldn't think about it, like it's a golden ale that's smoked, and you're just like, would you go to a brewery normally and order that? Maybe, maybe not, depending on who you are. But then you drink it, you're like, the whole world opens up at that point. You're like, oh, this is a beautiful smoked beer. Now I want to go find other smoked beers, you know, and but there's so much out there. It just comes down to, you know, execution and making beer that just tastes great. And not everything has to have a ton of hops in it, or not everything has to be super hazy. Now we do that. We do hazy hoppy beers, but there's so much great history with beer, so many great beer styles that, you know, somebody's going to find something they like. And that's what I always say. If you're not a beer drinker, you just haven't found that right beer yet.
That's exactly right.
Which you can say that about wine and anything else, I believe, too. So
my wife isn't a big beer drinker, but she's totally supportive of my interest in beer. So
Mhm.
she's always looking for that beer, and she's actually found some styles of beers that she really likes.
Yeah.
Exactly what you said.
Yeah.
She just kept looking, and there were enough choices. So,
Mhm.
but and I, you know, speaking of one of your DIPA, I mean, there was a period of about a year in my life. I think that's the only beer.
That's all you drank. That's all you drank. The Lake Cruiser.
Yeah.
What do you want, Bob? Oh, Lake Cruiser.
Yeah.
What do you want, Bob? Lake Cruiser.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're doing a Kolsch and a porter. So,
Yeah.
I know,
So look at
exactly.
you, you're living it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. So back to the beers in our glass.
Sure.
Good. Bruce, what are you drinking?
So I've got the Palmerstown IPA. So
If I wasn't drinking a DIPA, it would have
it would be
been
the
out.
Palmerstown, yeah. So that's our sort of go-to single IPA in the New England style, hoppy, hazy, right? So if I'm going to have an IPA, I probably start there. The DIPA and the triple IPA, the hat trick, they're kind of an investment in ABV, so you got to be ready for it.
We call it the launch.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, I'm going right down the middle with a single IPA.
Excellent. And how about you?
I am finishing up some 1810 Dunkel. So this is a beer that it's a Munich style dark lager. Very simple beer, but it's a beer we kind of brew in the winter now. We brew one batch of it. We canned it this year. We canned it last year. Just it's light and crisp, but it has a ton of flavor. It's only 4.8%. So this was a beer we had on the ice yesterday. People would come up and say, "What's your lightest beer?" And then I'd pour them that, and then it'd be like they would think I gave them a stout or a porter. I said, "Just trust me and taste this." And people are like, "Wow, like, you know, a lot of flavor for a small package," and you know, another lager that we try to brew during the winter months.
That's great. And that's a dunkel was what I learned about in the book that I was
Yeah,
reading.
yeah.
It's a dunkel.
Yeah, I saw it on the lineup when I walked in and
Yeah.
got a pint of that. It's
Yeah.
really,
And
really.
it's a favorite. We have some
Yeah,
diehard
really
Dunkel
nice.
fans that
Yeah,
just when they hear it's out, they come and they buy it. So it's kind of cool to see. Not an obscure style, but it's not a hoppy beer. It's not an IPA. When people kind of seek that out, it's cool to see that.
Yeah, we brewed it first time for Oktoberfest in 2019. So our very first Oktoberfest, and like a lot of our beers, Randy's kind of taken it to the next level. But we've had a following for now coming up on 3 years
Yeah.
for that
Yeah,
beer,
dunkel.
and they're actually not easy to find.
No.
A lot of breweries. So
Yeah.
it's great to see people coming for that beer.
And I'm drinking the porter, which Ken talked about earlier. And,
Yeah.
and what are you drinking?
I've got the Kolsch.
Kolsch.
Oh,
So this is
Excellent.
Kolsch is new to you.
Our
Yeah.
first Kolsch.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's a good Kolsch.
that's one thing. You know, that's a very traditional Kolsch. The reason we brewed it, you know, we wanted a Kolsch, but we actually threw it out to our Mug Club members back in the spring. We said, "What do you guys want to see us brew?" We threw them 4 or 5 different styles, and Kolsch was one of them. And they actually came back, and the response was Kolsch was a winner. So we said, "All right, we're going to brew Kolsch," but a Kolsch is an ale, but we treat it like a lager. So it's brewed cold, it's conditioned cold, so it's a beer that takes. I said, "I'm going to brew it. I just can't brew it until we get to some of the slower months."
space.
Right, and so
Storage
it's a
space.
6-week
Yeah,
beer
yeah,
from
yeah.
start to finish. So it's one of those things where I was like, "Yep, we'll brew it." We just had to put like a 6-month pause on the results and give the Mug Club a little bit later than they probably wanted. But it's a really nice traditional Kolsch that we've been enjoying here.
Excellent. I had it before the porter, and it was delicious.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Glad you stepped through that. And that would be in my wife's bandwidth.
Right.
Geraldine always looks for the Kolsch's or something lighter.
Mhm.
Right, yeah.
Heavy beer, so it's good to have that for that reason.
Maybe it pills, something
Yeah,
like that. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe you could also, we have some bright, shiny equipment behind us.
Yeah.
For those who might be interested in the audience, take us through a little bit of the process. What is involved with making a beer and getting it to the tap room
Yeah.
upstairs?
So we've got a 10-barrel brew house. So essentially what that means is we're making about 300 gallons of beer at a time. You know, we have one vessel that's dedicated to the mash, which is where we crush barley and add hot water. It mixes together, and we're basically bringing out the sugars in that process. Then we have another vessel that boils everything, so we can actually take all that sugary liquid, move it all over to the kettle, and we can actually boil it, which is, you need to do that with beer.
It's the cooking.
It's exactly. So we're adding hops for bitterness, we're adding hops for flavor, hops for aroma, and we might add other things in the boil like dextrose, more sugar. We might add lactose if it's a milk stout, that sort of thing. And then we've got 4 10-barrel fermenters and then 2 20-barrel fermenters in here. So basically what that means is 4 of our tanks you brew once into, essentially is one batch. And then the double tanks, which you'll see, full here all summer long, we'll actually brew twice to fill those tanks. With Dippa, your favorite.
Double and
I like
Yeah. So those they move really quick. Plus we can them, so at that point they move really fast. But after that, they go in the fermenter, and then we have one bright tank, which is essentially we would then push the beer over there. We carbonate it there. Then after that, we can go to cans. We have our canning line. We have a 5-head canning line, or we can keg it off for draft.
Yep.
And our whole setup is we'll put kegs downstairs, we tap them up, and then tap lines run upstairs. And while you're sitting at the bar, it's all coming right out of the keg.
So from start to finish, from the beginning of the process, when you do the very first step to the end, on the average, from a quick beer to a slow beer, what is the range of time?
The quickest you're going to get is probably 2 to 3 weeks, which is probably something like our Sandbar Blonde, which is 4.5%, ferments out really nice and quick. We do ferment that one a little cooler, so it does slow down a little bit, the fermentation process.
Yep.
If we wanted to, say, ferment that at 74 degrees, it'd go that much faster. And then on the long end is all of our lagers, our Dunkel, our Pils, we have our Patu Pale Lager coming out. It's a Vienna-style lager. That's in 2 weeks. Those take about 6 weeks, at least 6 weeks, because those are a nice cold fermentation. The yeast take their time to ferment, and then we basically slowly get that beer cold again, and then it sits cold for usually at least 3-4 weeks of just being at near freezing temperatures, and that's how we try to create our clean, crisp lagers.
So this, I don't want to get too technical, but this was kind of a milestone for me when I learned the difference between a lager and a pilsner, or is that right?
No, lager and ale.
Lager and ale. Sorry,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
I've been drinking.
Looks like you might need another one soon.
Well, I'm thinking we're going to get to the tasting.
Yeah, we're going to get
soon.
Yeah.
But let everybody know the difference between an ale and a lager.
So essentially, there are 2 different kinds of yeast. So ale is a top fermenting yeast, and you can ferment it warmer, and they come off fruitier in a sense. So a lot of your IPAs, your blondes, that sort of thing are ales, and they ferment faster. Lagers are bottom fermenting, and they work best at colder temperatures. So you might see lagers ferment at 50, 52 degrees, where ales are fermenting anywhere from 68 to 72 degrees, depending what it is. But the lagers, in my opinion, to make a good one, it needs time. And then the ales, just, they taste great on their own, but they can just ferment faster. So for us, you'll see a lot of ales from us in the summertime because we're always brewing. I mean, there's some weeks we brew 5 times in a week, which for us is a lot of beer. And then in the wintertime, you'll see more lagers because we do have the time and the space and the capacity to.
It takes up the tank.
Takes up the tanks. Yeah, 6 weeks in a tank. I mean, literally, you're saying, if we try to say brew a pilsner in the summer, that's going to take twice as long to brew the blonde ale. So, depending how fast the beer is moving, you still want to make sure that you have enough beer on tap and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a big commitment.
Yeah.
So if we're going to do a bigger, longer term batch of a lager, we're going to throw it in the big tanks, the 20s, because we can do 2 ale batches in the same amount of time. So, there's a lot of planning that goes into figuring out how to have lagers at the right time, the right volume, particularly for the summer. And I think we're still sort of dialing that one in.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case with all brewers, right? There's not a lot of lagers out there that I see.
Well, it's because when you're making ales, you can flip them.
Yeah.
You're maximizing your tanks.
And they sell.
Yeah. And they sell. They're real popular.
So it's
And then hop into some questions.
Yeah.
There are lots and lots of questions from the audience today. I think a lot of our
cool.
usual listeners are much more wine drinkers than beer drinkers, so they're rapid fire questions. I'm answering some of them myself, but a few to pass over. Distribution. So I know you've got a lot, on tap here. I know you've got a lot of cans here. Do you distribute cans at all? Do you distribute kegs? Are kegs available for the public to purchase? What's your distribution?
Where can we find your beer?
So,
Your beer?
taking those sort of in order, we distribute cans. So we have somewhere between 70 and 75 accounts right now. As far north as Lincoln, as far south as Concord. So right now for us, cans are the go-to for distribution. Frankly, it's,
By the way, you could get them at Hermit Woods.
you can,
Oh,
yes,
always.
exactly.
And you can get Hermit Woods cider beer.
Yes, beat me to it. So cans for distribution are just, it's easier for us, at least at our size and our tenure right now, to do that sort of one-way flow of distribution. There's no keg management and reverse logistics, all that kind of stuff. So right now it's cans to a lot of accounts, and it ranges from restaurants to convenience stores to craft beer shops. So if you look at our website, you'll see where to buy, and you'll see where you can pick up the cans. As far as kegs go, right now we have one account that we provide kegs to, and that's the Mount. So the Mount Washington, right now serves our beer. It's the only place in the state where you can get our beer on tap. So both bars on the ship have our beer on tap, and they sell in cans as well.
Guess
Right.
it's time for another cruise on the lake.
Yeah, right.
And the last question, critically, is for customers, yes, we will sell kegs, both logs or 1/6 barrels as well as half barrels.
Ideally,
So-
if you want to buy a keg, just reach out. If you're showing up on a Friday and your event's Saturday, it's going to be slim pickings. But if you give us, a little bit of heads up, we can at least make sure if there's a certain beer you want, we can make sure it's in the
Set
right
one
format.
aside.
Yeah, we set it aside, put your
Sure.
name on it.
Yep.
So.
So that question came from Matt, who's one of our regulars, and he was
Oh, cool.
asking about, do regulars buy your kegs? And I
They
think that
do.
transitioned into the question about, are there beer clubs, like many wineries have wine clubs? And I was able to tell them, yes, a lot of people, you have them, but
Mug club.
what's the mug club like at Twin Bars? I know you've got one.
We do have a mug club, and we right now we have about 100 members, and we try to limit it. And then each year we decide, are we going to expand the membership? But it's a very typical mug club. So you pay a membership fee, and you are served a larger portion of beer at a discount, and you get discounts on things like merchandise and food as well. So these are for regular customers where it's worth the investment of membership, right? But we do have a mug club, so you should look it up on all of our social media channels, Facebook, website, otherwise.
And one of the cool perks of the Mug Club that I will say is Hat Trick, which is a beer that came out, say, 2 weeks ago. Mug Club actually gets early access to draft for beers. So if they know a beer is coming out Friday, they can typically come in Thursday, and if they're a Mug Clubber, they can drink that beer on tap before anybody else.
Right.
So that is a nice little perk. You're getting sneak peeks at some beers.
Yeah, good point. There's sneak peeks for merch as well. So hockey, the hockey tournament's coming up this weekend. We did a special hockey jersey, so Mug Club members get a first dibs on that type of stuff as well. Yeah.
Nice.
Let's talk about that. Actually,
Sure.
Bring up the hockey tournament. So if you're not familiar out there, the hockey tournament is, I think it's in its 6th or 7th year. I don't know exactly. It's a huge event. They bring thousands of people out to the bay.
It's
on
amazing.
Meredith. There's something like 30 hockey rinks carved out on the
Yep.
bay. There's 270 or 80 teams coming
Yep.
from all over New England to play hockey, pond hockey, right here on Meredith Bay, and it's a party.
It's a
starting-
it's a blast.
It's a blast, starting Friday and all the way till Sunday
Yep.
when the championship rounds happen.
It's already
for all the
starting. I mean,
nations.
there's Bob houses out there,
Oh, yeah.
people
Sure.
run around and
Yeah.
dogs and kids.
It's an exciting event,
Yeah, it's
and
great.
if you didn't know, Hermit Woods, every year to celebrate this event, we barbecue brats on our deck, and we try and invite some of the local brewers to come share some of their beer with you at Hermit Woods Winery, which is right down, a couple hundred
One
yards
block,
from the
yeah.
ice, one block from the ice. So this weekend on Saturday from noon to 4, if you want to come out and try some of Twin Barns beer at Hermit Woods, we're gonna have a representative here sampling some of our beer. We really appreciate you guys doing that for us.
Of course.
We love carrying your beer at the shop and helping our guests discover the brewery down the road.
Yeah,
So it's a great way to do that.
There's never any lake cruiser though, because Bob drinks it all.
That's where it all
Okay,
goes.
that's where it all
That's
goes.
why you
Bring another case over.
Yeah.
No, sorry, we're out of that.
Now we know.
That's why you turned me on that book, Ken, right? You gotta do something. You needed the intervention here. Bob's got to start drinking something else. So that's what we're doing for
Mhm.
pond hockey, and obviously a representative of yours will be down there sharing some of your beer with our guests
Absolutely.
Excuse me, are you guys doing anything special for that weekend or?
So we generally do a couple of things. So we expand our hours.
Yep.
So we're opening at noon on Friday, which normally this time of year would be more like 3 or 4.
Yep.
So we expand our hours, and we do run a shuttle down
Okay.
town
Oh,
to help the players
great.
get up the hill to our brewery more quickly and say safely.
Yes.
Right, and get back downtown where most of them tend to stay. So we've got the shuttle that's happening as
Where can
well.
we pick the shuttle up?
The shuttle can be picked up at a few different locations. So Church Landing, right down at Town Docks, over at Lago, Mills Falls.
Oh, right there.
And we also run a satellite parking setup at Northway Bank up by the Circle.
Oh,
So
great.
if we have overflow there, we just run the shuttle between 4 or 5 sites constantly. So every 20 minutes, every 15 or 20 minutes, it's going to come by. People just have to watch for it, flag it down, and get a ride.
That's great. So
Yeah.
people can go out and walk around on the ice and watch all the action, and they can walk over, jump on a shuttle, come up to your brewery,
Yep.
have some beers, and go right back down onto the
Yep.
ice.
Every stop will have a sign. It's basically a sandwich board. Says the brew bus picks up here. You stand there, wait 15 minutes max, and it's going to come by. You can get a ride.
Yeah, this is a little bit of an aside, but
Yeah.
I saw you upstairs putting some signage together.
Sure did.
You guys have access to a snowmobile trail just off the back of the brewery here, right?
We do. Yeah,
So-
we had it built about a year ago.
So if you're out there on a snowmobile, trying to come down to the lakes to enjoy pond hockey, or just out there for a ride, there's a trail
Come right
that
up
goes
here.
right
Yep.
to the front door,
Literally to the front door of the brewery. Yeah.
That's great.
Yep. So it's off the main trail that hits Lake Wacawan, and it crosses 104. So it's about a 3/4 mile extension. So for the guys that know the trails around here, if you can get to Lake Wacawan, you'll see the
You'll find
signs,
your way.
and you'll find your way.
I know I saw
Yeah.
like 50 signs up on the table there, so it
Yeah.
should be pretty obvious.
Remember what I said about every day's a little different? Well, today is snowmobile sign
Sign
day.
building.
Yes.
I'm familiar.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You know.
You know, before we talk too much, I know how these shows run out.
Yeah, we've
Oh,
already.
yeah,
we've
There's some
already-
beers down there.
There's some beers.
That's giant.
I mean, my
about.
glass is empty. You want
Yeah.
some beers? A little
I think,
something.
tell us about, so let's try something.
Yeah,
We're gonna get to all
yeah.
the ones we wanted to, but,
Yeah, we should maybe, if this was a traditional tasting, I wouldn't start here, I would end here, but we should try Hat Trick because that is the beer that we brew
Very
for
fun,
the
yeah.
Pond Hockey Classic.
oh, perfect.
So
All right,
we brewed
this is
this-
for the pond
This is for Pond Hockey
Yeah, it
Classic.
is, yeah.
You know, it's got a great label. It's a triple IPA, hazy New England style IPA. It's
There are going to be
10.1%.
some pucks flying
Yeah.
all over the place.
So-
People
Just
start
drink it
drinking
after
that.
the game.
Yeah.
The guys that are playing.
Yeah, so this is our second year brewing it. It was a hit last year, but I remember when we went into Pond Hockey, you know, I said to Dave and Bruce, I was like, you know, we should brew a beer for this. And I said, we have 2 options. We can either go light, you know, the Labatt Blue territory of things.
Oh, they got that covered down there.
Exactly.
You
Or
got
we
it.
can do the opposite. And
Right.
Dave and Bruce said, let's do the opposite. So, we started messing around with the triple IPA. This is hopped with one of my favorite hops, which is Vic Secret. It's an Australian hop. And then Sultana, a lot of Sultana in here. And essentially, I'll let you guys try this.
We'll get
But
a tasting going.
yeah, well, it's very fruit forward, very tropical, very low bitterness. And this is a beer that flies out of here. The Pond Hockey players
It's gonna be
surprisingly
Bob's
love
new
it.
favorite.
So what's
Yeah.
a hat trick?
Yeah, so that's when you score 3 goals in a game,
Yeah.
in a hockey game. So, it's
Ah,
that's a hat trick.
And,
So we
it's, a, and
figured,
it's a triple.
and it's a
So-
triple. So,
Perfect.
but yeah, this is a great beer. And like I said, it's pretty limited. We did a big batch this for this Pond Hockey Classic because it did so well last year. So we ended up brewing a double batch of this. And these are long brew days because you're using a lot of grain. It's a lot of sugar in there. So it's it's a fun one.
You too?
Yes, please.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Why not? Should have enough.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So
Really nicely balanced. I love the texture, the bubbles, and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
So it's I get a lot of
Right.
pineapple and peach kind of on the nose and a nice creamy mouthfeel.
Before I taste this, I just wanted to shout out to you on your labels too.
Oh,
You guys
yeah.
have done
Yeah.
a really great job. I love the consistency of the brand between your various styles. They all have their own, but yet at the same time, they all have their own look and feel.
Mhm.
Hey, thanks.
I
Creative
love that
names,
with a brewery label that I want to be able to glance at the can and know what brewery it's from.
Right.
But I also don't want them to all look the same. either,
Thank you.
know?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
There's that happy medium of a variety of styles and things, but you have that brand recognition that you glance at that can of Wood Barnes beer, you know it's from Wood Barnes.
It's not easy to do either.
No,
I mean,
no.
the world of beer in cans and the types of labels just so out of
Wild
control.
West.
It is.
It's crazy. And I agree
Yeah.
with Bob. You guys just nail it.
It seems almost like stating the obvious, but we wanted to make sure you knew what kind of beer it was too.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there are some labels you have to look in the light. to
Yeah, you have no
determine-
idea what you're buying.
So
Right.
maybe our pendulum swung entirely that direction. It's very obvious. Porter, blonde, Gozer, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of, it's Twin Barns, you know what the beer is, but they're also consistent on the shelf. So it's a bit of a rainbow. Right.
And the big thing too is like we obviously distribute this beer now. If we're only selling in the cooler upstairs, it's a little bit easier to get that message across to people. But if somebody just walks into a store, say Casing Keg, like if they see Dippa from 20 feet away,
Right.
they're like, oh, it's exactly what I wanted. And
I get it.
they pick it out, they buy it, and it's just they appreciate that, just like you had said there. So yeah, it's a hard thing to. I don't think a lot of breweries do it really, really well. And I think we've done a pretty good job here doing the marketing on it.
I have to agree. There's a lot of, it's a Wild West. There's a lot out
Yes,
there,
yeah.
and you're right. I don't think a lot of breweries get that done well. And you guys
This
have nailed
too,
it.
that you've got this little bit
The
on the back
hops.
of the
Hops,
list, the hops.
Yep.
For,
Yep.
for the really nerdy, especially I feel like the IPA crowd.
Yeah.
The beer
They're
geeks.
like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah,
which
you gotta-
hops are
Right.
in there? And
Yeah.
I like this
Yeah.
one
That
from-
came from a customer of ours.
Yeah.
So when distribution customers said, you know what you guys need? You need hops on a label because I have 80% of my customers
People
come
care.
in with a particular
What it's made of.
preference
Right.
for a hop or a hop pairing. So we did it. Yeah. So we try to listen to the customers, not just here at the tap room, but in the field as well. Right?
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
I've been there with the can. What the?
Yeah. And-
Somewhere around here, it tells what I'm drinking.
Right. And craft beer drinkers are very educated, so if they say, I love every beer that has Citra in it, if they go and they're looking for Citra, we can tell, you can see that it's in Palmerstown, it's in the Lake Cruiser, and then you might see something like this, hat trick, it says Vic Secret and Sultana on the side, and you might be like, I've never heard of that before, let's try it.
Right.
And then when you get that pineapple and that passion fruit and peach, you're like, oh, apparently I like those hops, and maybe
Yeah.
you seek that one out for the next one.
So for me, tasting this,
Mhm.
first of all, what I love is that it's a departure from Dippa. So it's not
Right.
it's not trying to be a Dippa. It's taking it to another level. And the other thing I appreciated is it's not, for the amount of alcohol in this, it's not like a bomb.
Right.
It's got a little lightness to it. There's
So it's not boozy per se. You
Yeah.
don't get-
yeah, it's drinkable.
Which is dangerous.
I know.
Which is the problem. Because when you buy a
that's the
4-pack,
key.
it's
That's
like, oh.
it's like Belgian triples. They're
Yeah.
so digestible. They're so well balanced.
Right.
You can just drink them like they're a 5% beer.
Right.
And then you're like,
Then you're like, wait a
so
second.
you got to get up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to move.
Funny story. We have a couple of wines we do, sparkling wines in a 12-ounce can or 375 can.
Right.
And we've had some customers come back, and one of them is our crab apple, our heirloom crab apple, which has some very cider characteristics. And so a couple of customers come back, oh my God, what did you put in that can? You
Well, they drink it
crack
like a beer.
can and you drink it like a beer, or you drink it like a
12
cider.
ounces.
And you just drank
But-
12 ounces of 13% alcohol.
Right. Yep.
That's a half a bottle you just
Mhm.
pounded.
Yep. Yep.
I usually make a point when I'm
Chuck's-
at the tasting
Chuck's
bar and I
favorite.
mention that we have cans. I always say, just so you know,
Be careful.
one can is half a bottle. It's a good
Right.
amount, but
Right.
just be aware.
Right.
Yeah, this beer is really designed, like all of our IPAs, we don't want them all to taste the same. And that was actually one thing I did when I first got here is I wanted the Palmerstown and the Lake Cruiser to be differentiated a little bit.
It's important.
Lake Cruiser now is a little bit more piney and resiny, some grapefruit notes, where Palmer's now is a lot more citrusy and tropical. And then this one, obviously this isn't a regular beer year round, but this one comes at you with that tropical fruit. It has a lot of that Australian hop character that's it's kind of hard to describe it, but it's pretty unique to that style. And then even like we have a Posh IPA out right now that's a different Australian hop, and it's even different than this. So yeah, that's a big area to differentiate your IPAs, just the hops alone.
That brings another point. Ken has really taught me a lot about this. One of the things that is so remarkable, Ken's got this range of 30 or 35 different products that he's putting out every year, and they're all distinct. They all come to the tasting bar with their own unique character and flavor, and our guests appreciate that.
Mhm.
They appreciate that there's variation. There's
Sure.
if everything tastes the same, if there's that same underlying character to every single wine, it's not going to be interesting. And I find that
Likewise at a
often,
brewery.
I find that the case at a lot of breweries I go to. They sort of got the same yeast, or I don't know what it is. I'm not a brewer, but wait a minute, that tastes like the last one I had.
Different color, but it tastes about the
And
same.
last
Right,
one
right.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of variation. I like that variation. I want
Right.
to see difference.
A lot of that is, it could be the same yeast. It's cheaper to have one yeast on hand versus buying a variety. And, we work through on the regular 3 or 4 different yeasts because we want those different profiles. And frankly, you can't brew a traditional Kolsch like we were talking about earlier without Kolsch yeast. There's breweries that try with lager yeast and just regular ale yeast. In my opinion, if you drink a very traditional Kolsch, which we call it Einer Noch, which translates to one more in German because everybody wants one more.
Yep.
You can't brew that beer. You can't brew a really good Kolsch, in my opinion, without that Kolsch yeast. Now, we have to spend more money for that, because we're not always brewing a Kolsch, right? But that's when it comes down at the end of the day, we want you to enjoy the beer and we want to do it in a way that really honors that style.
I'll never forget when we left, we were digging in early on before we became a winery, when we met some other winemaker in the area in the state, and they were instructing us that, well, the yeast really doesn't have anything to do with it. This is the best yeast. Just buy this and use it.
Right.
Ken was
And I was coming
incensed.
from
I'm
the
sure.
world,
Yeah.
getting into making wine. I'm like, are you
Yeast doesn't
kidding
have
me?
anything
Right.
to do with it.
Yeast has got everything to do
Yeah.
with it. It's huge.
And talking about IPAs, like malt is really important in these hazy IPAs. A lot of people think you just throw a bunch of hops at it, but it's not about quantity. It's about quality. It's about the malt bill. It's about, all those little things that I think add up to a really good, specifically like a New England style IPA.
Right.
That's great. Well, this was delicious. Any
Yeah, it's great.
any thoughts, Ken?
Gosh, more.
Maybe we got one more. We got time for one more, only because I want to take full advantage of the opportunity to try.
And as you're distributing and pouring that, if there's we are nearing the end of the hour, so if there's other things you guys wanted to mention, things, upcoming stuff between barns, anything else in the works, as you could pour. Well,
Oh, sure.
while you
Yeah,
talk.
so
Definitely pour while you're
You can
talking.
pour while you talk.
yeah, Bruce will catch me if I miss something, but obviously pond hockey's coming up this weekend.
Yeah.
So you guys want to if you're down on the ice, take a shuttle up, and we've got a full kitchen with great burgers, a lot of really good food, and obviously we have about 10, 12 taps running. February 12th, we're actually doing a snow bocce ball tournament in our beer garden.
Really?
So we're actually going to build 3 bocce ball courts, and it's a 16-team double elimination tournament. So people are signing up right now. Go on our website, go on our Facebook. But we're looking to fill out a couple more teams for that tournament. And, we're giving away merch and gift cards and that sort of thing. Just a kind of a fun kind of full day event of just going out, drinking beer, and playing bocce ball. So that's then anything I'm missing.
I guess more broadly, this time of year we open up our beer garden on Saturdays as well. So even though recently it's been in the teens and single digits,
It's warming up.
you'd be surprised, or maybe not, that New Hampshire residents will drink anywhere, anytime. So we light some fire pits, put some heaters out there, and open up the beer garden.
And then people that show up on their
regardless of
snowmobiles
weather.
are already dressed for hanging out outside.
They love
anyway,
it
right?
because they hop a rope and they're literally 20 yards from 8 taps right
And
outside, and they're dressed for it.
Yeah, and the same with the hockey players. They're
Yep,
coming up
exactly.
fully
Hockey
dressed
players
to be in the
are
cold
loving
and
it. Yep,
hang out outside. They don't want to go
Yep,
outside. They
exactly.
Shed all those layers.
exactly. Yeah.
So I know coming up this summer, I don't know where you're at in the progress of it, but you have a disc golf course
Sure.
you're building here in the back of the brewery,
That's
right?
what, I can't believe I haven't tried that out. I play a lot of disc golf, and we haven't made it here yet. So next
It's
summer, it was still
it'll be
kind of
open
getting
this
there. Yeah, it wasn't
spring,
quite there
summer.
yet.
So I'd say right now I'd give it 90% done in that the course is cut. So it's about 5-6 acres. It's going
It's
to
just
be
9 holes, right?
it's 9 holes, 9
9 holes.
baskets, and we're hoping if it's a success that the next year we'll expand to 9 baskets, 18 holes. So we'll just have different tee boxes for the latter 9 holes. It's all cut. I mean, if you were adventurous, you could take a disc out there right now and play. The baskets are out, but we need to finish the tee boxes, some of the signage, make it a little bit more official. But we're hoping that gets done this spring. And all of a sudden, it's
I'll be
one
there.
more thing to do.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And what did you just pour us?
This is 1810 Dunkel, which is our.
This is what you were talking about earlier.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm
Yep.
glad you poured this.
Yep.
I was, as you're talking about it, I'm like,
Yeah, you don't want to
Yep.
miss that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is a beer. It's Ken and I were talking about the nature of the recipe earlier. It's only 3 malts. It's very simple. It's very traditional. It's got like a really nice kind of bready, toasty flavor to it. A little bit of chocolate, a little bit of coffee in there, but it's only 4.8%. So it's one of those beers where at 4.8%, you're getting, people say dark beer, but you're getting a lot of flavor for less than 5% alcohol. So this one is, we have a lot of customers that come in when Dunkel hits the taps. It does really well, and if you'd asked me before I got here if a Dunkel would do really well in Meredith, New Hampshire, I'd say probably not. But it's a beer that has like its core fans. It's kind of like a cult classic of, in the beer terms. But yeah, I love it. We were pouring it yesterday on the ice at Beverage, and we had some people coming back for 10, 12 pours of it because it was a beer they could drink the whole time.
All day long.
Not worry about it.
They weren't driving.
Right.
Absolutely.
Buses.
So this is an important point, and something that Ken and I have been learning about since the beginning of this. We have an opportunity here to help educate the people that come in, and that's probably why we're here talking about this.
It's huge.
It's huge. Most people think of beer, in America, there were a handful, 20, 30 breweries that could have ran the show for 75 years. And a lot has changed in the last 20 or 30 years, and as craft breweries have really come on strong. But education is a key. Having the opportunity to learn about what is a Dunkel. That's why when I read that book, it was like, I need
There's
to
more than
learn.
just IPA.
Yeah. So, Dunkel is a term most people are not familiar with in the beer world, except for the real true beer geeks. And you get an opportunity now through your production of it to teach people about a Dunkel and maybe teach them about the history. And this word comes from Belgium, right? Or from Europe.
So Dunkel translates to dark. So it's
literally
German
for dark.
Dark
German,
lager.
okay.
Yeah.
German for dark. Simple.
Yeah, and just like a classic, really good. Memory serves me correctly. Like if you wanted something dark, say 100 years ago, Dunkel is what you would get in Germany, and that was like your one option. It's been perfected over the years, but it's just one of our awesome lager offerings. I think in the winter, like I said earlier, we've got our Vienna lager coming out in a couple weeks. That's named in honor of Penny Patu. So any skiers watching this right now might know Penny Patu. Google her. And you'll read some great
Olympic
stories.
skier, right?
Wonderful. So we did that Vienna lager last year. We're bringing our Czech Pils back. It's like I said before. You might not know you'll like it until you try it, and in that process, you got to educate that customer. You got to educate whoever. So, is Dunkel the fastest beer we sell? No, but is it worth brewing every year and having those guys, everyone come back and maybe discovering it as a new favorite? Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
We won't be the brewery that has 12 IPAs on tap. We won't be.
Good. And I would use this little shout out. If you come up here and you're not a beer drinker, there is a cider on tap from Hermit Woods.
In cans.
Yes.
Yep.
Always available.
Sorry.
Always available.
Always available. Yeah. So and people love the cider, so we go through a lot of the cider. I see you guys probably every week delivering, so that's good.
You guys must be our biggest account in terms of cider distribution.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You guys sell more.
Good to hear.
Biggest, nicest.
Nicest,
right?
Absolutely.
Best to work with.
The best.
That's
Super easy to work with.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
You guys have more of that. It's the Hermit hard cranberry apple cider that Ken makes, and it's sold in a can here. And I think more of it goes out into the world here at your brewery than anywhere else.
Customers
Yeah,
love
it's
it.
delicious.
Well, they order it because it's local and they're curious and they just love it and they keep ordering it.
Well,
So
that's
it's been a great
exactly what
success.
happens at Hermit Woods. We always have a few Twin Barns beers down at Hermit Woods, and all the time people are, they see our long list and they're like, oh, it's Twin Barns, it's right up the road, and they're like, oh wow, that's so cool. Yeah, I'll get that one. And then they often head right up the road after anyway. I think that's one of the few times that people don't order Twin Barns is that they'll get something else because they are planning on heading up the road. Okay, I'll try that later, but try something else now.
That's been. Ken and I were over the moon when we heard you guys were opening a brewery in town because that's what we need. We need that kind of synergy.
Right.
And the folks who are coming to discover unique and interesting wines that Ken's making are also the same type of people that want to discover what's going on in the beer world. Craft beverages, distilled, brewed wine are on fire around the world, and so the opportunity to come to a small town in Meredith and try a couple of them in a few hundred yards, get on a bus, and then you have to get in your car again.
Exactly.
So it's been a great synergy, and we've appreciated it.
Fantastic. Yeah, we love it as well.
Do you have any other questions before we
Not
sign
pressing
off?
ones. I think there's a couple things I might ask after the fact, and I'll fill people in later.
As always, if you have questions that we didn't get to,
Yeah.
we'll get to them after the end of the
Yeah,
broadcast.
but I think we're good.
You're good?
Yeah.
So we have come to
Reached our hour
the
and then
end
some.
of another hour and
Wow.
then some. Yeah, it's
Wow.
it's always amazing.
Like you said, it was fast.
How
Yeah.
fast time flies. And there's so much more. I mean, I have
I know,
a
just
dozen
scratch
other
the
things in
surface.
my head that
Right.
I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about. Ken probably has a bunch, and maybe just. Is there anything before we sign off? Is there anything that we didn't mention, or something? Some big plans for the future you want to reveal here and now? I don't know. Is there anything that we missed that you?
Drum roll.
Drum roll. Yeah.
Boy, talk about being put on the spot.
Yeah, right.
I think we covered it all. Yeah, we're just hoping that we've got some new fans online there that are interested in coming to check us out.
Yeah.
Great,
And,
yeah.
and kind of like the brewing process, we're just trying to make things better every day,
Yeah.
and it happens down here in the brewery, but it also happens upstairs and outside. Like we're just always trying to make our process better. We're trying to do things better. If it's front house, if it's education for our bartenders.
Yeah.
So, we're always, or a food menu,
Yeah.
we're always working on things, just trying to make it better every day, every week.
That's awesome. So for those of you who don't know, what is your address? Where do they find you?
Oh, so it's 194 Daniel Webster Highway. So we're on Route 3, just south of Harley Davidson.
Across the street, basically
Across
from
the street
McDonald's?
From McDonald's,
Yep.
Ippolito's Furniture, if you know that location as well. And we are a brew pub, so we haven't talked about it at all yet, but we do have a full food menu. Everything from sandwiches, burgers, soups, salads, and the like.
Great.
So
Okay.
plenty to do, plenty to drink, plenty to eat.
Awesome.
Either way, yeah.
Great. Yeah, so come on up. And your website is
TwinBarnsBrewing.com.
twinbarnsbrewing.com.
Yep.
So
Super
great.
simple.
All right, folks, we've come to the end of another hour of our Monday Night Live, and we really appreciate you guys being here with us. We always have so much fun, especially when you get to drink Twin Barns beer.
Right.
Cheers.
Cheers to that. And we look forward to seeing you next week. What are we doing next week? We got a
Next week is a vertical tasting, like
vertical tasting of Lake House Red. I am
Oh.
so
A vertical
excited.
tasting.
Are we invited to that?
Dude, sure.
I'd like to do that.
Come on up.
Yeah,
That sounds fun.
Why are we going back with that, Ken?
I think the first vintage is 2014.
2014 Lake House Red.
I
and
think,
we're gonna-
your tasting notes, I think you made it first in 2013. 2014, we have that vintage, and that's what our 2 Bottle a Month Club members are getting. this weekend.
Oh,
Right.
that's cool. So
Right.
tune in next Monday to learn how Lake House Red has held up over the last 7 years,
7,
8
yeah.
years.
Cool.
Wow.
And so we'll do a vertical tasting, and we hope you can show up for that. So thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next Monday. And any other time we might decide to randomly go wild somewhere.
Could do that tomorrow.
Could do that tomorrow. You never know. So cheers, everybody.
Cheers, y'all.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Good.